The Imperial Russian court glittered under chandeliers as nobles gathered for the winter ball of 1889. Countesses draped in diamonds and generals adorned with medals mingled beneath the watchful eyes of Tsar Alexander III. Among them stood Lady Eliza Grayson, her posture perfect but her eyes downcast, knowing that beneath her elegant appearance lay a secret that would see her banished if discovered. "Stand straighter," her aunt whispered harshly. "The Countess Orloff is looking this way." Eliza adjusted her spine, feeling the corset dig into her ribs. 6 months at court, and still she felt like an imposter. The daughter of an English merchant who had married into minor Russian nobility, she had been sent to St. Petersburg following her parents' deaths, taken in by a reluctant aunt determined to secure her a suitable marriage before rumors of her father's disgrace spread eastward. What no one at court knew was that her father had died not from illness as claimed, but by his own hand after his business collapsed amid accusations of fraud. In London, the Grayson name had become synonymous with scandal. Her mother, unable to bear the shame, had followed him weeks later. "Lady Eliza," came a voice, and she turned to see Princess Vorontsova approaching. "I understand you play the pianoforte beautifully. Perhaps you might favor us tomorrow at my afternoon gathering." Eliza curtsied. "Your Highness honors me, but I fear my skill is greatly exaggerated." "Nonsense. I insist." As the princess moved away, Eliza's aunt squeezed her arm in triumph. "An invitation to the princess's salon. This is precisely the opportunity we needed." Eliza nodded obediently, but inside, a familiar emptiness expanded. What did these invitations matter when they were built on facades? If anyone discovered her father's disgrace, her true circumstances, or worst of all, her mother's Jewish heritage carefully hidden for generations, she would be cast out without a moment's hesitation. Love, genuine connection, these were luxuries she could not afford. Her only duty was survival, maintaining the fragile facade of respectability, securing a marriage that would seal her position permanently before the truth emerged. "The Grand Duke has arrived," someone murmured, and the crowd parted. Grand Duke Alexei Jurovsky strode into the ballroom, his military uniform adorned with medals earned during the Russo-Turkish War. At 32, he stood as the Tsar's cousin and trusted advisor, unmarried despite being one of the most eligible men in Russia. Rumors claimed he was too devoted to his military duties and intellectual pursuits to bother with marriage. Eliza observed him from behind her fan, his tall frame, the serious set of his jaw, the way others deferred to him without question. He embodied everything she could never hope to attain: unquestioned belonging, absolute security in his position. "Do not stare," her aunt chided. "Men of his rank do not notice women like us." "I wasn't staring," Eliza replied, though she had been. "And I harbor no illusions, aunt." The truth ached within her. No matter how well she played her role, she would always remain an outsider, clinging to the edges of a world where she did not truly belong. The best she could hope for was a modest marriage to some aging widower who would overlook her lack of substantial dowry. That was the reality she had accepted. The only reality possible. 3 nights later, disaster struck at the Yusupov musical evening. Eliza had just finished a Chopin nocturne to polite applause when Prince Mikhailov approached her, his expression unnervingly intent. "Lady Grayson, is it not? I've been corresponding with an associate in London who mentioned your father." The room seemed to tilt beneath her. "My father passed last year, Your Highness." "Yes, under rather unfortunate circumstances, I understand." His voice lowered. "My friend suggests the official account may have been sanitized." Ice flooded her veins. Someone knew. Someone had written to St. Petersburg. "I don't know what you mean," she managed. "I think you do." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps we might speak privately about these matters?" I could be persuaded to be discreet. The implied threat hung in the air between them. "Excuse me," came a deep voice, and Grand Duke Alexei appeared beside them. "Lady Grayson promised me this next piece." Prince Mikhailov bowed immediately. "Of course, Your Imperial Highness." As the prince retreated, Alexei offered his arm. "I believe the terrace might offer some fresh air, Lady Grayson. You appear pale." Without waiting for her response, he led her through the French doors onto the deserted terrace. The night air bit through her thin sleeves, but Eliza welcomed the shock of cold. "That man was distressing you," Alexei stated plainly. "Your Highness is mistaken," she replied automatically. He studied her face. "I am rarely mistaken, Lady Grayson. Particularly about men like Mikhailov, who collect secrets like others collect art." Panic fluttered in her chest. "I should return inside." "Not yet." His voice was quiet but firm. "My sister Sophie spoke highly of your playing. She said you have an unusual sensitivity to the music, that you play as though you understand sorrow." The unexpected observation caught her off guard. "The Grand Duchess is too kind." "Sophie is seldom kind without reason." He looked out over the garden. "You are not what you appear to be, Lady Grayson." Her heart stopped. "I don't understand." "Most young ladies at court are eager to be noticed, to advance their positions. You play your role perfectly, yet your eyes—" He turned to face her. "Your eyes are always looking for exits." The accuracy of his perception terrified her. "You watch me, Your Highness. I observe everyone. It's both my duty and my habit." He gestured toward the ballroom. "Shall we return? I believe they're beginning a mazurka." "Your Highness doesn't dance," she said without thinking. A slight smile touched his lips. "You observe as well, it seems." "Forgive me. I spoke out of turn." "No," he said. "You spoke the truth. A rare commodity at court." He offered his arm again. "Come, Lady Grayson. Let us give them something to gossip about." And to the astonishment of everyone present, Grand Duke Alexei Jurovsky led Eliza onto the dance floor. The following day, an imperial messenger delivered an invitation requesting Lady Eliza Grayson's presence at the Grand Duke's literary salon that evening. Her aunt nearly fainted with excitement. "This is unprecedented." The Grand Duke's salon is the most exclusive intellectual gathering in Petersburg. Only the highest nobility and the most brilliant minds are invited. "Then it's clearly a mistake," Eliza said, staring at the embossed imperial seal. "Mistake or not, you will attend. Wear the blue silk, it brings out your eyes." That evening, Eliza entered the Grand Duke's palace, feeling hopelessly out of place among the distinguished guests. Scholars, writers, and aristocrats engaged in spirited debates about Tolstoy's latest work and the philosophical implications of Dostoevsky's novels. She hovered at the periphery until Alexei approached. "Lady Grayson, welcome. Have you read Turgenev's Fathers and Sons? We were just discussing nihilism." "I have," she admitted. "Though I found his portrayal of Bazarov somewhat problematic." His eyebrows rose with interest. "How so?" "Bazarov rejects tradition and sentiment, yet in the end, it's precisely those things that define his humanity. I believe Turgenev suggests that nihilism fails because it denies our fundamental need for connection." Silence fell around them. Then a bearded professor nodded vigorously. "An insightful observation, young lady." The conversation resumed with renewed vigor, and to Eliza's surprise, her comments were met not with condescension but with genuine engagement. For the first time since arriving in Russia, she found herself speaking honestly, without carefully measuring every word. Later, as guests began departing, Alexei guided her to his library. "You've surprised everyone tonight," he said, closing the door. "Including me." "I've overstepped," she realized with horror. "No. You've reminded me why I host these gatherings." He gestured to the books surrounding them. "Ideas matter more than titles here." He removed a volume from a shelf. "This is the New English translation of Pushkin. Your Russian is excellent, but I thought you might appreciate reading him in your mother tongue." As she accepted the book, their fingers brushed. The contact, brief as it was, sent warmth spreading up her arm. "Thank you, Your Highness." "Alexei," he said quietly. "When we're away from court, I prefer my name to my title." The intimacy of the request unsettled her. "That would be improper." "Perhaps." His eyes held hers. "But I suspect you understand better than most how confining propriety can be." She looked away first. "I should go." "Before you do," he hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "Prince Mikhailov has been reassigned to our embassy in Constantinople. He left this morning." Eliza's head snapped up. "What?" "I suggested to my cousin that Mikhailov's particular talents might be better utilized abroad." The Tsar agreed. The realization that he had intervened on her behalf, without even knowing what threat Mikhailov posed, left her speechless. "Why would you do that?" she finally asked. Alexei's expression grew serious. "Because your face when he spoke to you contained a fear I recognized. Whatever secret he held over you, it wasn't his to use." "You don't even know me." "I'm beginning to," he replied. "And what I see intrigues me far more than the usual court facades." As her carriage rolled home that night, Eliza pressed her hand against the book of Pushkin's poetry, feeling as though something fundamental had shifted beneath her feet. Over the following weeks, Eliza found herself repeatedly in the Grand Duke's company. He requested her presence at concerts, invited her to gallery exhibitions, and included her in his intellectual gatherings. Each encounter revealed new facets of the man behind the imperial title: his dry wit, his genuine passion for reform, his surprising kindness toward those below his station. Her aunt was ecstatic. "The court whispers of nothing else. To think our Eliza has caught the eye of the Grand Duke himself." But Eliza knew better. Alexei valued her mind, perhaps even her company, but a man of his position would never seriously consider someone like her for marriage. More importantly, their growing friendship was built on quicksand. Every conversation, every shared moment existed in the shadow of what he didn't know about her. One afternoon, walking through the Winter Palace gardens, Alexei asked about her childhood. "There's little to tell," she deflected. "My father was in trade. We lived modestly in London. Your education suggests otherwise. Few merchant daughters read Kant in the original German." She stiffened. "My mother believed in education for girls." She must have been remarkable. She was. The genuine grief in her voice couldn't be hidden. Alexei stopped walking. "What happened to them, Eliza?" The truth. The compassion in his eyes nearly undid her. How easy it would be to unburden herself, to share the weight she carried alone. But she couldn't. The moment he knew, everything would change. They died within weeks of each other. It was very difficult. It wasn't a lie, merely an omission. Yet the gap between what she said and what remained unspoken yawned like an abyss. That night, she wrote in her journal, "His friendship is the most precious thing I've found in Russia, and it's founded entirely on deception. Each day I let him believe I am worthy of his regard, I compound the inevitable betrayal. A letter arrived from London a week later. Eliza's hands trembled as she broke the seal in the privacy of her room. It was from her father's former business partner. Word has reached London of your surprising prominence in St. Petersburg society. He wrote. Such achievement requires funds. I wonder if the Russian nobility knows of your father's crimes or of your mother's heritage. For a suitable arrangement, I could be persuaded to maintain discretion. Blackmail. The threat she had always feared had finally materialized. She burned the letter in her fireplace, watching the paper curl and blacken. There was no money to send, even if she wished to. Her aunt provided for her basic needs, but little more. The fine dresses she wore to court functions were mostly altered hand-me-downs from her cousins. That evening at the opera, seated in the Imperial box at Alexei's invitation, she could barely focus on the performance. Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin played out before her, but all she could think of was how quickly everything could unravel. "You're distracted tonight," Alexei whispered. "Forgive me. I received troubling news from home." His hand covered hers briefly on the velvet armrest. "Can I help?" The tenderness in his voice nearly broke her composure. "No one can help with this." After the performance, he escorted her to her aunt's waiting carriage. Before she could enter, he took her hand. "Whatever troubles you, Eliza, remember that positions of power occasionally have their uses." She withdrew her hand gently. "Some problems can't be solved by even the greatest power." "Try me," he challenged softly. But she only shook her head and climbed into the carriage. Later that week, the Grand Duchess Sophie requested Eliza's company for tea. "My brother speaks of little else but you these days," the Grand Duchess said, pouring fragrant tea into delicate cups. "I've never seen him so captivated." Eliza's cheeks warmed. "His Highness is simply kind." "Alexei is many things, but simply kind is not one of them." Sophie studied her carefully. "He believes you're different from other women at court. That you see the man, not the title." "I see both," Eliza admitted. "And they seem equally admirable." Sophie's expression softened. "You care for him?" It wasn't a question, so Eliza didn't answer. "He intends to speak to you at the Imperial Ball next week," Sophie continued. "I believe his intentions are serious." The teacup rattled against its saucer as Eliza set it down. "That's impossible." "Is it?" "My brother is cousin to the Tsar, but he's not bound by the same marriage restrictions as the direct line. The court would never accept me." "The court accepts what the Tsar approves," Sophie said simply. "And Alexander holds Alexei in highest regard." Panic rose in Eliza's throat. "Your Highness, please, there are things you don't understand." "What I understand is that my brother deserves happiness after sacrificing so much for Russia." Sophie reached for Eliza's hand. "And I believe you might give him that happiness." Eliza left the Grand Duchess's apartments in turmoil. If Alexei truly intended to propose, she would have to disappear before then. The alternative, letting him declare himself only to learn the truth afterward, would humiliate him before the entire court. Yet the thought of leaving without explanation, of never seeing him again, created a physical pain in her chest. That night, she made her decision. She would tell him everything and then remove herself from court before the scandal could touch him. He deserved the truth, even if it ended everything between them. The night of the Imperial Ball arrived, the Winter Palace transformed into a wonderland of lights and flowers. Eliza wore her finest gown, a deep blue silk that had once belonged to her mother. Her aunt had declared it outdated, but Eliza didn't care. Tonight wasn't about impressing the court. Alexei found her immediately, his eyes warming at the sight of her. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. May we speak privately? There's something important I must tell you." Concern crossed his face. "Of course. After the Tsar's arrival and opening dance, we can step away." But before the Tsar could enter, a commotion erupted near the grand entrance. Prince Mikhailov, supposedly in Constantinople, strode into the ballroom, his face flushed with drink and anger. His gaze swept the room until it locked on Eliza. "There she is. The fraud who has bewitched our Grand Duke." A horrified silence fell. Alexei stepped forward, his voice dangerously quiet. "You forget yourself, Prince Mikhailov. Leave now, and perhaps the Tsar will overlook this breach of protocol." But Mikhailov was beyond caution. "The court deserves to know who you've been honoring. Her father was a swindler who cheated hundreds before killing himself in disgrace. And her mother," he laughed cruelly, "her mother came from a family of Jewish merchants who changed their name to hide their origins." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Eliza stood frozen, the nightmare she had feared finally realized in the most public way possible. "I have proof," Mikhailov continued, waving papers. Letters from London detailing the whole sordid affair. Alexei's face had gone completely still, revealing nothing. The silence stretched unbearably. Then the Grand Duke spoke, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "And I have proof of your gambling debts, Mikhailov. Debts paid by those seeking to place a spy in the Ottoman embassy. Shall we compare evidence?" Color drained from Mikhailov's face. "You cannot, guards," Alexei called calmly. "Escort the prince to the palace security office. The Okhrana will want to question him about his foreign contacts." As Mikhailov was removed, protesting loudly, whispers erupted throughout the ballroom. All eyes turned to Eliza, standing alone, exposed before the imperial court. She raised her chin, refusing to cower even as her world collapsed. With as much dignity as she could muster, she turned to leave. Alexei caught her arm. "Wait. Let me go," she whispered. "Please." "No." His grip remained firm. "Face them with me." "You don't understand." Everything he said was true. "I know." His quiet words stopped her cold. "I've known for weeks." She stared at him in disbelief. "How? Did you think I would invite you into my circle without knowing who you were? I had you investigated after our first conversation." The betrayal cut deeper than Mikhailov's public accusation. "You knew, and you let me continue this charade? Was I some kind of amusement for you?" Pain flashed across his face. "No, Eliza. Never that." Before he could continue, the doors opened and the Tsar entered with the Tsarina. The entire court bowed deeply, conversation suspended. Alexei leaned close to whisper, "This isn't finished. Meet me in the East Garden in 1 hour." Then he straightened and moved to greet his royal cousin, leaving Eliza standing alone amid the stares and whispers of the court. Her aunt appeared at her side, face ashen. "We must leave immediately. The damage is catastrophic." But something in Eliza rebelled at running away. For months she had lived in fear of this moment. Now that it had arrived, she felt a strange liberation. "Go if you wish, Aunt. I have an appointment in the garden in 1 hour." The East Garden lay quiet under a full moon, its paths deserted as everyone remained at the ball. Eliza sat on a stone bench beside a frozen fountain, no longer caring that the cold seeped through her gown. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path, and Alexei appeared, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "You came," he said, sounding relieved. "To say goodbye." Her voice was steady despite the ache in her chest. "After tonight, I'll leave St. Petersburg." He sat beside her. "Running away confirms their worst assumptions. What does it matter what they think of me now? It matters to me." He turned to face her fully. "Eliza, I've known about your father's business failure and suicide since our third meeting. I've known about your mother's heritage since before I invited you to your first literary salon." She stared at him. "Then why? Why continue the pretense?" "There was no pretense on my part." He took her cold hands in his. "I saw a brilliant, kind woman hiding behind a carefully constructed facade. Every time you relaxed enough to show me the real Eliza Grayson, I only wanted more. But my background is of no consequence to me." His voice grew passionate. "Do you know what I learned fighting in the Turkish War? That nobility is not inherited through blood but demonstrated through action. I've met princes without honor and peasants with more dignity than the entire court." Hope, dangerous, fragile hope, flickered to life within her. "The Tsar would never approve a match with someone like me. Alexander cares about two things: loyalty to Russia and family happiness. I've proven the first through years of service. The second," his eyes held hers. "The second depends entirely on you." "What are you saying?" In answer, Alexei slid from the bench to one knee before her, still holding her hands. "I'm saying that I love you, Eliza Grayson. Not despite who you are, but because of it. Your courage, your intelligence, your compassion, these are the qualities I want in the mother of my children, in the woman who stands beside me for the rest of my life." Tears blurred her vision. "The court will never accept me. The court will follow the Tsar's lead. And Alexander has already given his blessing, conditional only on your answer." She shook her head in disbelief. "When?" "This afternoon. I told him everything, including what Mikhailov might do. The Tsar was actually impressed by your resilience." A wry smile touched his lips. He said anyone who could navigate Petersburg society while carrying such secrets must have considerable diplomatic skill. So tonight was unfortunate in its execution, but necessary in its outcome. Now there are no more secrets. He squeezed her hands. "Eliza Grayson, will you marry me, knowing that the path won't always be easy, but we'll face whatever comes together?" For so long, she had believed that love was a luxury she couldn't afford, that her heritage and her father's disgrace made her unworthy. But looking into Alexei's eyes, she saw herself reflected as someone of value, of worth. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." He rose and pulled her to her feet, gathering her in his arms. His kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "We should return to the ball." Alarm flashed through her. "Now?" "Yes, now." Determination hardened his features. "We'll enter together, and I'll announce our engagement immediately. The court needs to understand that you will be their Grand Duchess, and any slight against you is a slight against me." The old fear tried to resurface. "Are you certain?" "More certain than I've been about anything." He offered his arm. "Ready?" Eliza took a deep breath and placed her hand on his arm. "Ready?" Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of the Grand Duke's palace, now Eliza's home as well. 6 months had passed since their wedding, a surprisingly modest ceremony attended by the imperial family and a select few from court. The Tsar himself had given her away, a gesture that silenced even the most persistent critics. After the ceremony, he had kissed her cheek and whispered, "My cousin chose well. Russia needs strong women who understand both privilege and hardship." Not that the transition had been entirely smooth. Some older nobles still snubbed her at functions, and gossip occasionally reached her ears. But for every door that closed, others opened. Her work establishing educational programs for girls from all backgrounds had earned her respect beyond the aristocracy, and even some of her former critics had begun to acknowledge her contributions. Alexei entered her study, where she sat writing letters. The university board has unanimously approved your proposal for the scholarship fund. Eliza looked up with a smile. For all qualified students, regardless of background. Exactly as you specified. He moved behind her chair, placing his hands on her shoulders. They were particularly impressed that the funding came from your personal allowance. Money well spent. She covered his hand with hers. My mother would have approved. Speaking of family, his voice grew gentle. Have you considered when we might start our own? Warmth flooded her cheeks. Are you suggesting, Your Imperial Highness, that we should practice again tonight? He laughed, turning her chair to face him. I'm suggesting we've been practicing quite effectively for months. The court physician confirmed it this morning. Her hands flew to her stomach. Truly? Alexei knelt before her, just as he had in the garden the night of his proposal. Truly. By winter, we'll have a child, Eliza. She threw her arms around his neck, overwhelmed with joy. A child who would be raised knowing both sides of their heritage, who would understand that worth came not from title or background, but from character and contribution. Later that evening, they attended the opera. As they entered the imperial box, the audience rose in respect. Eliza no longer felt like an impostor as she acknowledged their bows. This was her place now, not because she had married a Grand Duke, but because she had found the courage to be herself, completely and without apology. As the orchestra began to play, Alexei leaned close. Happy? Eliza thought of all the paths that had led her here, the tragedy that had forced her to Russia, the fear that had kept her isolated, and finally, the love that had given her the courage to step into the light. Completely, she answered, and in her heart, she knew it was true. The girl who had believed herself unworthy of love had vanished, replaced by a woman who understood that the greatest hierarchies to overcome were not those of court or class, but the limitations we place upon ourselves. Alexei squeezed her hand, and together they turned their attention to the performance, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges came, they would face them as they had faced everything else, together.